Good evening. My name is Gertrude Bell. I am off to the desert again, to another excavation site. For years, archaeological teams would come and there would be wholesale looting of our national treasures. But I am the Director of Antiquities for the new nation of Iraq. It is my job, I wrote the laws to govern these excavations. And I will keep some of the best pieces for a museum that I am creating to celebrate the heritage of this great culture. Can you imagine me, an Englishwoman, Director of Antiquities, and King Faisal's most trusted advisor? Oh, I've come to love this nation. I've come to love this culture, the land and its people. I never feel an exile in the East. Indeed, I feel it is a second native country. If I didn't have family in England, I should never wish to return. But I do have family there, family I love very much. I loved growing up in Yorkshire. I was very close to my father. My mother died in childbirth with my brother when I was only 3 years old. And when my father married again, I was determined this woman would not become between me and my father. But I came to love Florence very, very much. She let me run outside and taught me to ride horses and garden. I'm still quite an avid gardener because of her and have the only full English garden in Baghdad. She also was an avid learner and went to even studied herself with Maria Montessori. I went to school in London for a while, but eventually I attended Oxford. And I was the first woman to graduate with first honors from that university. But when I returned home, Mother said I was too Oxford-y, that I would never be able to catch a husband and get married. I dreaded my debut. 3 society seasons of utter boredom. I wanted to have intellectual discussions, not dances and cotillions and parties and teas. Finally, there was a reprieve. My uncle was stationed in Tehran as the ambassador to the country of Persia. I learned Farsi and went to visit him. I will never forget that first day. Right, we rode out into the deserts of Persia, boundless deserts around us, vast and barren. And we came across a small garden. It's such a garden. When you step foot through the garden gate, your one foot was in an arid, barren wilderness, and the other in a flowery, shadowy paradise. Flowers and fountains and blue-tiled houses. I never knew what paradise was or what a desert was until I came to Persia. Years later, I continued my travels. I was living in Jerusalem and began to forays out into the desert for weeks and weeks at a time. I was an archaeologist, and so I was studying several important archaeological sites. I even founded an important palace of Uqader, of which I published one of my many books about. When I traveled in style. I always had crystal and linen and china. I had 2 tents, one to sleep in and one to entertain my guests and do my work in. I even had a collapsible bathtub. I had a cook and muleteers. I looked like a queen traveling. In fact, they began to call me Khatun, Queen of the Desert. I met all the important sheikhs and Bedouin leaders and tribal leaders. This stood me in good stead, for when the Great War began, I became the first woman British intelligence officer. I was a liaison with all of these tribal leaders and Arab peoples, for I spoke all their languages. I spoke Bedouin and Farsi and Arabic, as well as Hindustani and Japanese and Italian, German, and French. After the war, I decided to stay in Iraq, the new nation that would become Iraq, and help to build this country. I helped to place King Faisal on the throne. It is the most important work I've ever done. This country, this nation will truly be a joy to watch as it grows and prospers in what we now know as the Middle East, the nation of Iraq. That was a little introduction to my character of Gertrude Bell. My name is Karen Varanche, and I'll be performing her for the Ashland Chautauqua. She is one of the most amazing women I've ever had the pleasure to research. She was born in 1868, so she was very much a Victorian woman, and she just broke all the boundaries of expectations and traveled. In addition to being an expert on the Middle East, she was an expert mountain climber. In fact, there's an Alp named after her. And as I said, she was the first woman to graduate from Oxford with honors. So she really broke some barriers. She must have been a remarkable linguist as well to learn so many languages. Um, she is said to be the only English-speaking person the Arabs had any respect for. And so I've been studying this character and studying the history and the politics and the culture of the Middle East. And I look forward to sharing all of those things with you as we talk about wars and great wars and how those change our culture and our ideals. I thought you might like to see what I based my costume on. I had a picture of her that's quite famous, and I thought that you might like to see this picture of that's Gertrude Bell standing in front of her tent in the desert, or I guess an oasis, because you can see some of the palm trees behind her. But she did not veil. She wouldn't have worn a veil ever and hidden her face. But you do need a scarf so you can to keep out the desert sands as you ride across the desert. At any rate, thank you for spending some time with me. I look forward always to coming to my home of Ashland. Thank you.